When and where did you meet Kathleen Dayus?
I first met Kathleen Dayus about 1985-86. I think it was just after I'd finished my PhD, so it would be about 86-87. And Kathleen was in her 80s then, and she was giving a talk at a church hall in Edgbaston on the Persia Road, and so was I, about life in Birmingham. But don't forget, she'd lived this life. I was writing about it. I'd talked to my mum and dad and lots of people that lived in back-to-back houses, but she'd actually lived it compared to me. It was my family that had lived it. And we became friends, pals. And I saw Kathleen quite a lot after that. Then in 1988, I managed to get a part-time hourly paid job at an adult education college called Fircroft in Salioka. I'd been on the dole, you know what I mean? When I say I was on the dole, I was out of work. So this was exciting for me. I got a job, but it was only hourly paid. And Kathleen, I was desperate to get a full-time job. And Kathleen came one night, I arranged a talk, and she came and gave a talk to the students that night. And then we saw more of each other over time. Kathleen she would give talks, but what she would do when she gave a talk, she'd stand up and she'd go, and she'd talk for about 10 minutes about her life as a child, then she'd go, so what do you want to know then? And then she'd wait for people to ask her questions, do you know what I mean? So you could probably see in the film, she was more comfortable really writing about her childhood than talking about it, unless she was being asked questions. Once she was asked the right questions, she'd chat and chat.
Do you think Kathleen's mother influenced on the person that she was?
Kathleen, as you saw in the film, was told she was one of a baker's dozen. A baker's dozen was 13, because when the bakers would make a dozen loaves, they'd always do a 13th one. And that's why 13 was known as a baker's dozen. But not all of them lived. Because of poverty and disease, there was a very high death rate amongst babies, infants, and young children. Kathleen's mum was like a lot of working class mums, poorer mums. She knew the problems there would be if another baby was born. What kind of problems do you think there would be for a poor family with more and more children?
Rations would have to be split.
Yeah, food would have to be split up more. Do you think the dad and mum were earning any more money with more kids coming in?
No.
So the same amount of money that before was for 3 or 4 kids now had to look after
13.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's, I think, looking back in life, why Kathleen, although her mum was horrible to her growing up and very tough, Kathleen mellowed. She was quite angry with her mum in her younger life. And her big sister, you know, can you remember the sister's name? Mary, yeah. Her big sister was like a little mother to her. She kind of looked after and protected Kathleen. She was a lot older than Kathleen, Katie as they called her. And so, later in life, when she had kids of her own and had troubles of her own, she started to understand her mum a lot more and was very forgiving. Mums like Kathleen's mum that were very hard and unloving. There were others that were tough but were loving as well. Do you know what I mean when I'm saying that? It's not easy to understand because life was very, very hard. Very hard. And if you treated your kids too softly, they wouldn't be able to cope. That was the attitude then. But she came to understand her mum more as she got older.
What kind of clothes would Kathleen wear and what were they and where did she get them from?
Poorer kids wore second-hand clothes. The mums would go to the rag market. That's why it was called the rag market, because it was ragged clothes. My great-grandmother was a woman who would go around the posh houses, like lots of other women, and buy old clothes from the rich, and then they would go up to the rag market, excuse me, and they wouldn't have stalls, they'd lay the clothes out on the floor. And mums would come and buy what they could. But if you were the youngest in the family, you weren't just getting second-hand clothes. You're the big sister, you wore them first, you're number 2, you're number 3, you're number 4, and you're the baby. So you're wearing everybody else's cast-offs. And you wouldn't have a clean vest or clean knickers every day. You'd be wearing the same underpants all week, and then they get washed once a week. And you would be lucky to have Sunday best, and the times that Kathleen's talking about, most men would try to have a separate second-hand suit to wear on a Sunday, and mums would have a clean white pinny. You know the pinafore I showed you, like, you know the pinny that you wrap round? Yeah. So they'd have a pinny for work, and then a pinny for best on a Sunday. And they would try to have the kids to have at least something a little bit better on a Sunday to go to Sunday school. They wouldn't go to church, they'd go to Sunday school. But poorer people didn't have a lot of clothes. Didn't have a lot of clothes at all.
Was school free at that time?
So another good question. By the time that Kathleen came along, school was free. Before Kathleen's day, in the 1880s, mums and dads had to pay a penny a week, except they were very poor. But from the 1890s, school was free. Kids had to earn money as well as go to school. So, I'll give you an example. My granddad had to get up very early and go to the paper shop and deliver papers. Then at dinner time, when he came home, lunchtime you would call it, we called it dinner time, he would go home with his younger brothers and he'd have to take, you know, you saw Kathleen's mum doing the washing for other people, that when that was finished, they'd have to take it back to the better off people who'd ordered the washing. Then after school, my granddad would sell newspapers again. So what do you reckon he was like at school? He's working of a morning, tired. And when you're tired, are you going to learn as much, Ibrahim?
No.
So that was a problem that was facing a lot of poor kids, is that they were getting an education now, but often they were too poor to be able to really get the best from the education because they still had to work. And you could take an exam at the age of 11 called the labour exam, and if you could prove you've reached a certain standard at school, you could leave. So my granddad left school at 11, he should have left at 14. Lots of kids left school at 11. And even when me and David were kids, well, I'm sure you were the same as me, we had to wear short trousers as boys till we were 13. Because you didn't wear long trousers until you were a man. And 14 was when you're supposed to go to work. So it used to be horrible in the cold weather in the winter, because you'd have grey socks and you'd pull them up as far as they would go, wouldn't you, David? And you'd pull your short trousers down as far as it would go, but you'd have that much left of skin, and when it was raining and snowing, you'd come home and your legs would be red, wouldn't they, with the cold, David? They're really red and horrible. But my granddad was told by his mum when he was 11, go to the second-hand clothes shop. She gave him half a crown, 12.5 pence to buy a pair of long trousers. Go to the factory, sell him your 14 and they'll give you a job, and he started work at 11. My nan left school at 13 because she had to look after her younger brothers and sisters, because my great-granny was washing and taking him washing for the better off. So it was really difficult for poorer kids to get a full-time education. Yes, it was there in theory, but in practice it was very hard.
Sing up.